Good stuff, guys. Well, it's good to be back. So let's go ahead and maybe get on to the next stages here and keep it kind of fast and furious, but not so fast that we're unable to follow it. So we're going to move our tailstock back a little further because we're going to begin a hollowing procedure. But before that, we do need to actually true up our profile a little bit. We've trued up this face lovely. That's a very clean surface, and I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and now just move some things back. Some housekeeping here is just to say that I do want to make sure that I remain with the blood in my veins. I am not donating blood here, so this comes out. You want to make sure you're not swinging into that. Just put this aside. There's our life center, a little pointy, too pointy for my elbow. Okay, I don't need that in my life. So let's get into maybe acquiring some fine detail with the spear, but we'll before that probably look at seeing what we can do back with an interior tool. Exterior tool does allow us to actually, in fact, work on our exterior. So we'll go ahead and maybe realize since we've trued the surface up, maybe what we will do is actually account for creating a downhill cut. This is actually a good area, a good position, and to be able to make the downhill cut, given that I have a little bit more of in this region, I have if we can take maybe a look over for a second. Thank you. I do have some clearance by way of the, not the shoulder, but the little platform that I have in here to be able to take this tool down probably all the way into this region to be safely away from the jaws. However, the point is that I don't need to go so far down here. I probably go far down enough. Let's see about how far down I can really account for going. Probably need to only go this far down in all reality, because all this area will be considered a bottom third region of the vessel. Upper third's probably between about here and here. Mid third about from here to there. Bottom third from about here to there. If I'm in this lower portion of the sweep, I don't actually have to account for going all the way down in this region to true this material up. It's nice to be able to do that, but you don't have to, being that the time that will allow you to be able to shape and blend the bottom portion of your vessel into a foot or into a nice round section, whatever it happens to be, will account for that at a later time. However, I will go down into that region because I do have the clearance. I like to be able to grant myself that clearance, just so I know the full length of the shape there, and I'm ready and set to go with that. Good. What we're going to do now is actually focus on creating a sweep, starting on our perimeter, and actually create a slight uphill cut that turns into a downhill cut. But then we'll actually go back over the surface with a spear point, which should allow us to be able to really not only true the piece up, but really get a final finish on the surface, straight from the tool. That's what we're looking at right now. So back up to full speed. And full speed in this case is around 2,000. So I'll go straight in, essentially taking a cut going directly, taking almost a 90-degree pass all the way in. And then I'm just going to sweep the tool out this way and create a nice curvature. So I'll start at around the not 12 o'clock position. That's, again, not a reference to the angle that the tool's held, but rather just how open or closed the tool is. That's 12. Tool's at around 45 degrees. It's just being kept at the side, leading with the nose of the tool, and I'm just cutting maybe, probably no more than a quarter of an inch of material off at a time. Good shavings at the moment. I like seeing those. And this is creating a little bit of a high spot at the top of my rim. And pretty happy with that shape. Let me just keep going a little bit more so. I'll probably put something simple on the top like a bead. But that's about the sweep that I want to see. I'm just basically flaring this out a little bit, creating a cove sweep at the top. The cove turns into a half bead. So here's a cove. Again, I'm not focusing on the cutting edge, but rather the bevel. The bevel is what's tracing the profile, and the bevel is what's accounting for being able to actually burnish that surface nicely. And so now we're actually headed in a direction to start cutting downhill a little bit, and that's an okay thing to do. Let's see how clean we're cutting up to this point. It's probably fairly decent, but note that at the point of which we start to descend down in this region, it will be tearing out a little bit. And that's okay. We can come back with the spear. But for now, we can see we have a pretty nicely burnished surface. That's nice. That's very clean, no tear out, and happy to see with that. Let's keep going. And now we'll transition into a downhill push cut. What I'm also doing is I'm counting for the taper that has the tool support. over on the side that is nearest to the platform area. Now I'll just pick up the cut firstly by rubbing the bevel at a particular area. It's not going to just, what I'm not going to do is just take the tool and do this, so I guess I'll just do it just to do something that I don't want to do. For an example, I don't want to just do that. I'd rather start the bevel rubbing behind the surface somewhere maybe about right here. That actually helps me to see that by the time I pick this up, it'll be like a little magic eraser that as long as I see a little dust right before that line, there's a burnish mark before it. Let's pick up that burnish mark and a little bit of dust. Now that we have that, I mean, it's an infinitesimally small amount of dust, but I'll pick up that line like it's a magic eraser with the bevel. There it's gone. And now transitioning into a downhill cut. You do want to make sure that if you're making a downhill cut, you're only taking off about 1/4 of an inch width of material off at a time if you can help it. That's pretty close to that here. I'll switch over to making a left-handed cut now. Bevel rubbing. This just gets my left hand closer to the area that allows for the least amount of movement in order to allow for this. And I'm a lot more stable with the body here by way of just the shift into the left hand. Even if you make a left-handed cut, you're still feeling it from the right hand, probably, if you're right-handed, that is. So we're doing pretty good. You'll see tear out probably in this region right here. You'll see tear out there. That's okay. I'm more concerned with getting rid of the undulation. That's step one. Get rid of the undulation. And we can see the nice thing about having the wing swept ever so slightly is that I can actually take this all the way down into that corner using the micro bevel, but you can see that it is swept. And also, I do make a couple references with bowl gouges and this type of grind. One is flat ground and swept back. This is, to me, still a flat ground profile. And I guess I come to define that by way of something. The length of the wing doesn't quite surpass the width of the flute, so that to me still accounts for being more of a flat ground profile. So I'm not looking for my own personal usage, to have a grind that's just dead flat. I like a wing because when I'm on an interior such as this type of form and I have to trace the contour, well, that's what I'm doing. I'll be tracing the contour from the hollowing procedure. I want a wing, I want a little bit of a wing on a tool like this to account for the nose and the bevel of the nose making that contact without the wing being in the way to then catch. More wing than less is a bad thing. You want to just be cutting with the bevel of the nose, not the wing, when you're on an interior, which is, again, why I do not use a tool like this for hollowing. Even though that's a great tool for the sake of, slapping a form together, that's to say just throwing a heavier shaving on the ground, roughing out. It's a great procedural tool in that way of a reference. But for hollowing, this is going to be a lot of problems, create a lot of problems if I'm trying to take a tool like this and assume that with all of a single bevel's worth of nose and then the wing as well, that's not going to be conducive to a clean cut. It will really be the opposite. What I want to do now, though, is again show that if I make the downhill cut beyond the point of my perimeter, that's just cutting cross grain. Now, this is just called cutting cross grain up here in this region. That single cut across the surface, just slicing the fiber here. When I get into this region, I'm cutting downhill. That means my fiber is being torn out because it is still faced this way, and then I'm tearing like that. No support. I'd be able to bend the fiber with the form if I'm cutting uphill like this. I'm actually bending the fiber. This is just pulling fiber out if I cut downhill. Let's see if we can make that point again. So yeah, there should be tear out there. I want you guys to see that tear out in there. That's not what I want. However, I did acquire the shape that I want. So it doesn't matter if I have tear out here. Just don't say to yourself that that was the last cut. You don't want to end on tear out. You want to end on the right shape and then end the form itself with a very clean cut. So that means I'm going to transfer over to using a spear point to do any. So this is the second time we've actually shaped this form. We shaped it once on the other, as we were in the other position. Now we're in the chuck and we shaped it a second time. I will ask, is there a third time that we can do it? Or I'll ask myself. I guess it's rhetorical, isn't it? Well, if I would say that you can shape it a third time, but you wouldn't want to have your hollowing probably extend beyond this upper third. If your hollowing goes beyond this area, you really don't want to touch your exterior again. You don't want to do that. So right now is the time to create the final form and the fine detail as well. What I'll focus on is an area of, well, firstly, I'll just remove that little pencil mark. And now I'll get into a region to where what I can do is account for really cleaning up any of that tear out in there. And I'm just closing that to the surface. That's now a pull cut, or actually a pull cut that is in fact a shear scrape. It's cutting pretty nice and clean. Looking to maybe burnish the surface a little bit if I can, but most importantly, just getting rid of the tear out. And that's okay. Again, it's okay if you have tear out if what you've done is arrive there by way of creating the actual final form that you're looking for. And it sometimes means that cutting downhill is an option for you, or maybe it's the only option. That's okay. Just don't finish with tear out. Finish with a clean surface, and you shall be rewarded for that. So I'll basically be pulling with the right wing of this tool. I see what I have on this tool as a wing. This is just a scraper, but it's my spear that I use. And I would say that after the tear out's fairly deep, because if you're cutting downhill in a region where the symmetry of your line is very sharp, and the cut was, and of course that's created by way of a downhill cut in this case, I'm going to have some deep tear out in there. But I want to stop the lathe right now just to see if I got rid of it. I imagine that it's mostly gone. And we'll see here in a second. And where are we at with that? And it looks like all of that tear out is gone. So that's a good thing. That's a great thing. So now what we'll do is we'll keep pulling the fiber a bit towards the rim, probably up to where the line of where this curve breakage is. Now the curve breakage is commentary on where this cove meets this cove sweep meets a higher spot somewhere in this region. And I would say that in terms of design, what I don't want on a piece like this is a bead just sitting maybe right in the middle. I want the really beautiful line. I want to see something that's maybe accentuating the rim a little bit. We'll keep it simple enough to just highlight the rim and get that done. So let's pull up a little bit more, so probably into this region. And then we'll probably make one more pass, maybe with an uphill cut from this side after rolling a bead, and blend the curve a little bit more. And we should be good for our exterior. But what I'm looking to do now is create a surface that's cut to probably around 220 or 320 straight off my tool. Or it's really not worth the time to even try to cut the wood clean. You really want to make sure you get a great surface. Now, that's by way of dropping the handle just a little bit, rotating the tool in, realizing that if I do drop the handle, and if I am rotating, I can go downhill a little as well. I can flex the tool back downhill. And we brought that all the way up into that region, and that looks to be pretty good now. What I'll do now is actually take a spindle gouge or detail gouge, same thing. Maybe just a bead at the rim. That's very sharp. Now the bead's created from the 9 o'clock position, firstly as a V-groove, then it turns into, or it rolls into a 10 o'clock position. Essentially that's just by way of 9 o'clock. Drop the handle. As I drop, I'm rotating this direction or forward, facing the direction of my cut. That's over here. So 9, 10, and then back into 9. Well, this is what I would call a very open area, enough to where I don't really have to start a roll. I don't have to start a V-groove here. This is essentially a giant V-groove because it's just air, right? So I'll just start in this position at about 10 and roll into 9. There it is. Now what I'm looking to do is accentuate a curvature up here that can allow for being able to really create a nice blend of this line into this region. I think that if I'm to use a spear, that may be my best option, given that cutting downhill from this region means I might have some tear out in here. So for me to be able to account for for the long point to get into this region, I'd rather just pull up into the half bead section, and in that area just blend my curvature ever so slightly. That's what grinders are for. I'm actually going to put this over here for that reason. So here we go. So back into it. Really nice surface developing here. Happy with what's here. I want to make sure that what I have in terms of the bead is something that flares out a little bit, essentially creating a raised bead. The beauty of the spear, though, is also just being able to get directly into that corner and really account for creating that bead quite simply. Or I should say, the bead is created, but I'm highlighting and accentuating it. Now here I am just sort of rolling that nose directly into the bead. This would be a good place to start if you're making a wood pottery vessel, this type of vessel, just ever so slightly semi-enclosed. And I'm happy with what I see here. And then, of course, you have to actually ask yourself, do you mean that? And I think that I do. I like the form. The other thing that I can do is that as long as I'm using a detail gouge, you can come back the other way. And with a micro bevel, high speed, a little bit higher speed, I will actually make a downhill cut. And being that I only have about 1/4 of an inch of the actual main bevel touching the surface, I'm probably very much okay to not only just create this burnish mark here, but bring the tool up and in. As long as I'm taking off probably no more than a 1/16, I imagine that I have a good form in here. And that's to say also a piece that does not have any tear out on it. We'll check and see in a minute. Remember, even if you cut downhill, my point of this particular demo, at least at this stage, is to show that it is absolutely okay to cut a little bit of tear out, so long as what we do is know we can always go back and be able to fix that. So I'll go ahead and round this a little bit more, all the way down into a V groove. And there we go, nice surface there. Let's just make sure that what we have is a nice line. Line's looking good to me over here. This is considered maybe a left-handed approach, just because my left hand's on the ferrule of the tool right now. Yep, so that's looking pretty good. If we can back off and see the form a little bit, let's maybe see the profile a little bit more. There we go. So basically that's what we're looking at, folks, and happy to see what's there. Back to right-handed position. And let's go ahead and maybe take this all the way into the corner. I use the spindle gouge not only to roll the bead, but just to refine the curvature a little bit. There we go. Happy with that. What I want to do is, because I probably won't be sanding this piece at all, I want to make sure that I'm creating a fairly blemish-free surface. That's save for something like a burnish mark. I'm okay with burnish marks. Burnish marks to show where the bevel's rubbing. That's okay. At least to me, that's okay. And I'll still go back into the gouge just to make sure that the curvature that I'm getting isn't so stark and tapered, but rather has a slight sweep into the V groove of my bead. And I have to do this at high speed. Small amount of bevel will ensure that I am not getting any tear out. This is not going, I'm not taking enough material out to likely produce it. And that's a good burnish right there too. That's 3 o'clock. Let's open it up to maybe about 1. And then back to 3 o'clock. There's no fiber support on this side, so I have to make sure that I can round that and not tear out from the other. And I'm just making a series of cuts that are drifting, really more than anything. So when it comes to that surface and when it comes to that form, I'm pretty happy with what I see there. What I need to be sure of, though, is I stop the lathe and actually can account for 0 tear out and maybe the only mark or blemish on the surface to just be something like a burnish mark. Let's see what we got. And that looks pretty good to me. I'm happy with what we see. I'm okay with some burnish marks around here. However, no tear out, and yeah, looking great. I think I'm good with that. Let me see if I can just trace that a little bit more. I told you 1 cut doesn't mean 1 more. It means like 5 more. So let's do a couple more. Into the corner. Don't need any bevel support here. If you have bevel support, that's okay, but we really don't need it. I find that the burnish that I'm getting from the spear is a preferred burnish at the moment anyway. Just being that it's blending the coloration of just the cuts as the finish. Because I won't be sanding this. I've determined that because I want to make sure we can maybe get into something else as well. Spend a little time. And so that is more the surface that I actually want, for sure. It's now just a game of, since I have the surface I want, blending the coloration with respect to the type of pull cuts that I need to make. And just about ready to do some hollowing, guys. Basically have the tool rest supporting my cuts where the runoff point is. The runoff point is basically running, in this case, towards the rim. And in here. But this would just be a variety of this type of wood pottery vessel. Just a variety of it with a nice little bead on it. Essentially, what I'm about to do when I hollow is kind of hark on to something that's helpful. If you can see a surface, I don't believe that you should be scraping it. You should be likely cutting it. And that's going to be a reference to some of the hollowing that we do. But just really taking some last little bits of cuts all throughout this region. Being very light to the touch. Noticing that we can really do the good kind of damage up here, which is to just really see that what we have is very, very fine dust and just a fine shaving and a fine line. So all of that's supporting itself. And yeah, I'm happy with what we see here. There's a little area where I have a blend of burnish marks. I'm just trying to blend the coloration a little bit. So close. And I think that for all intents and purposes, we did it. That's looking okay. So for this, you'll see that there are tool marks insofar as burnish marks from the bevel are concerned, but nothing that there's no tear out on the surface, and that's okay. A blemish from the bevel is okay. You do not want tear out on the piece, though. You really don't. You really don't. So now we'll switch over to the interior tool again. The interior exterior tool is just a bowl gouge. In this case, it's a 1/2 inch, and this 1/2 inch gouge will account for this particular grind. It will a little bit. Yeah, you'll always, when you hollow, that's a good observation, and that's always true. Yes, if you hollow, you're always going to create a little vibration in the end. You're just trying to minimize it enough so that you have less than more. That's about the best that you can do, really. So that's why when your sanding procedure begins, and if you are happening to sand something, you shouldn't be sanding probably above 600 RPM. You should probably be in the 3 to 600 range. Makes a big difference. So that the whipping around at, say, a piece that's moved a little through the pressure of the hollowing cuts can be counteracted by a little bit slower speed when the grit is hitting the fiber. So all of that. Now we're going to go ahead and hollow in. Now I'm just going to highlight an area. Oh, that almost fell to the ground, but that's what grinders are for. I'm going to taper this in a little bit. That's to say my rim. Just to show a little bit of silhouette to the form. That's what I'm looking for about right in here. And as I stand back and see the form, I'm liking what I'm seeing. That's all right with me. That's looking pretty good. I'll even go back to the V-groove of that little bead. There we are. And just roll a little bead. We still have that, but I just want to make sure we're nice and round up here, not actually having a sharp edge up there, and it's nice and round. Happy with that. Here we go. Now to the interior. This is something that can be sanded. It's probably starting with about 220. So I'm happy with what we're doing. A little bit higher speed now. Height's about at the direct center. That's looking to be a good spot to be in. We're switching it up now. So when I'm actually starting my hollowing procedure, I do want to make sure that the handle is not at my side, because if it is, then when I'm at a position to maybe trace the bevel a little bit. But you can see right there, if I start a cut right there, it's just going to create a run back. I have to actually start my cut over here and then swing the tool forward. Just initially, probably not even having the handle cross the bed on the side nearest me. And so then again, now every cut that I make is a hollowing pass, and the cuts that I'm making are starting at about the 2 o'clock position. Not again a reference to where the tool is positioned in sort of an arced where the tool's arced or positioned in terms of the handle, in terms of the angle, but in terms of the roll and position of the flute is my reference. So that's about a 12 o'clock position now where the flute is. You can see by way of the dust. If I roll over to about 2, that's about where I want to start my cut, 2 or 3. And then I roll into about 1, and I hold it. There we go. Got a little bit of catch there. That's just because I'm starting a little bit too open. Let's close it a little bit more. Sometimes 2 or 3 is okay. 2 o'clock, or 3 o'clock is okay to start your roll. That's about as deep as I want to go because at the moment I'm looking to actually just create a series of plunging cuts on my exterior face, which do account for opening up this form enough to then be able to shift the tool rest inward a little bit more. That's withstanding still having enough material in here to account for creating a final wall thickness. And so that's to say that this mass does support the cuts nearest the wall thickness at the and my contour here. So looking good now. That's about as deep as I'll go. Maybe I'll just continue the sweep. Something about this position of the tool, not in terms of seeing on the video, but if you're watching where I'm at right now, there are two positions in hollowing and they do matter drastically. When I first start all my cuts on an exterior face, the handle is always in a position to where what it's going to do is create a corner and a plunge. This is the position to create a corner and a plunge, a corner and a plunge, a corner and a plunge. And then you take the cut all the way to the end until you've determined where the corner's wall thickness that is just underneath the rim will be. And then at that point, you're shifting into a position that will eventually cause you to need to be with the handle tapered on this side so that you're tracing the profile. When you're into your vessel like this and you start here, this can be one of the main reasons that you actually will end up with a napkin ring or a funnel, is keeping the tool, is basically starting with a plunge hollowing cut. This is a plunge hollowing cut in terms of the position of the handle. It's meant to have a wider sweep by the time the bevel traces in to create the profile. A cut that's just tracing the profile and the contour is typically going to be more so on this side because there's more bevel support than there is raw cutting edge making your cut. So this is where I will end in the second portion of my cuts. But that's about as deep as I want to go for now. But now that I have this open enough, what I'll do is move in just a little bit more. It's an okay place to be right now. Just move that tool rest in just a hair more. There we go. Same height. About 3 o'clock. Sorry about that. Probably have to move just a hair. 3 o'clock. Don't need a lot of support, just enough to where there's enough pressure going down into the tool rest that would be about the same amount of pressure as creating a burnish mark. In terms of my rim width, that's probably about what I'm looking for right there. So if I wanted to make more passes or cuts on my exterior, now's the time to do it because I still have enough mass in here to account for the cuts to be able to be made. I can do that now, but I don't need to, fortunately. However, if you say to yourself, I think that I want to make a few more cuts over here, now's the time to do it. Now's the time where you have to do it. This mass will certainly account for that, but have to be careful with that. Now we'll sweep some of this general material out, so what I can do is actually account for the tool rest being a little bit more angled inward there, and then likely switch over to something else that will undercut this region. It may be that sticking with this tool is okay. That's being that I have a sweep at my underneath the main micro bevel, and that's called clearance. And that's also called essentially a sharp enough angle that I should be able to account for maybe just keeping this tool in my hand the whole time. Should I need to acquire a finer or thinner wall thickness, which I don't mind, where is it? There it is. I would be using something like this. Now you might say, well, I thought you just said you shouldn't be using a tool with a wing in there. Now I want to show you something that's a little different about this tool and the grind of it. We may not even use that. We'll see how the actual hollow and the sweep goes on my interior. But I'll show you the difference between this tool, if we can get a good shot of that, or a good look at that, versus this tool. Do you guys see a difference? Okay, what do you see? Yep, one of them has a micro bevel too. You see the micro bevel? The micro bevel is just ensuring that there's only about the same amount of material engaging the surface as this tool. This is my interior-exterior tool. Look at what they have in common. See that? 2 microbevels. So the only reason this wing is swept back right here is for the sake of having the clearance granted to me to potentially be into the corner here, and that's a possibility. We'll see. We may not need to use it. But if I am going to use a tool that cuts in there, it's only and that's swept back, it's only for the sake of the clearance granted to me to get to this upper third region, which accounts for just taking the tool in at a reasonable angle or plane, and that's what that's for. That's why, okay? So let's keep going a little bit more. Let's remove some of this material. This material is allowing me to, well, have it gotten rid of so I can actually move my tool rest in a little bit more. I don't ever want to take a tool and swipe it back this way. However, if I have a buildup of material, I can cut that straight in, but I cannot ever take a tool, get to the base and get to a flat base in there and then pull. If I pull up the fiber, then what's going to happen is I'll be hitting both end and side grain. That's a big problem. The bigger problem is just the overarching contour, which is greatly overriding the length of the wing that I have on here, which means I'll have a gigantic catch, likely. So I don't want to risk that, but I do want to make sure that I can move my tool rest in far enough so that I can continue to effectively use a gouge. So that looks to be a good position to now be able to change this up, switch it around, and that's all we need to do now is get into that position. But I also have to realize that I don't want to be too low. I've been moving this around enough that I have to keep checking the height of my tool rest to match the center of my initial drill bore. That's pretty good, I'd say. At the wall, though, I'll raise it up just a hair more. Sometimes when you're cutting slightly above center, you can cut a little cleaner. That's often the case. So I'll basically lead in with a cut on the rim, really make that nicely tapered. Really like a good taper on the rim. But I'm aiming to make something that would really only need to be touched with maybe 220 and maybe some wet sanding, maybe a wet sanding procedure. So we'll see where we end up here. So I want to make sure that because I've done this much in my process, that when I start the cut, what I don't want is a run back. One of the reasons that one of the reasons why parabolic and V-shaped fluted gouges seem to be more preferred, and why I prefer them, I use parabolic, is because the nose is a little thinner and will form a little sharper apex. And so what that means is that it's more likely to, if in a 3 o'clock position, that's of course 12, 2, and maybe about 3, it's more likely that that sort of, the cut will almost thread like a needle. You're almost like threading the needle. And if you're doing that with a V-shape or parabolic flute, you're more likely to not have a run back, as long as you're not starting open like this. So I don't want to be open. See the 12 o'clock position there? That is a very bad position. That's a really bad catch or a run back on your rim. What I want to do, it's pretty funny. Yeah, you've never seen that before. It's because you've never done it before. It's never happened to anyone in here before, right? Never. So I want to make sure that I'm really starting prominently at 3 o'clock. And thank you for that video work. I appreciate it. Make sure, give this guy a round of applause for just making sure to do it right. I appreciate that. It makes a big difference when you can have that help. So thank you guys. So good work there. Let's see how much material we can take off. I'm only looking to take off maybe about 1/4 of an inch at a time. That was a little bit too much. Overhand grip now. And now I'm getting into my wall thickness a little bit more. There we go. Happy with that. That's a pretty decent wall thickness in there. It's kind of thick. I think what I will do is actually switch over to that other tool just to show it's okay to use a micro bevel with a swept back wing. As long as it's a deep fluted bowl gouge, you can absolutely use it. But I'm only going to be maybe tracing that profile as far into maybe the upper third as I would need to, and then I'll transition back. So I'll probably sharpen both of these tools right now. That's what it looks like, especially that one. Brand new edge. That's at about, again, so this angle, that's probably around maybe 45, maybe 40, maybe a little less. And then that's at that's at around 60, the main micro bevel. That's about where it is, guys. It's not a magic formula. It's just accounting for the clearance that I need and the amount of bevel support at the nose that I wish to use. That's really all it's for. So back into it. Now I have the clearance that I need with the tool rest. I'll back this off a little just so I can make sure of that. It's okay to be safe, not sorry. It's certainly better to be one more than the other. So that's a good angle right here. And that's literally as much as I'm going to use that tool. That's it. So, wall thickness wise, what am I looking at? That's pretty good. I want us to see maybe the surface that we're getting there if we can. I always like to, when I do a demonstration like this, also make sure that I'm not making like a hollow form. The beauty of a form like this is that we can still actually see that interior a little bit. It's pretty good in terms of what you can see. That's probably tapering into around a half of an inch, maybe more like 3/8. That's maybe thin enough for some. Do you think it's thin enough for me? Nah, I'll go thinner than that. Yeah, that's not good enough for me. Are you trying to suggest that I just go through this piece? Thinner. Yeah, you sound like my wife. No. For a wall thickness, so God, in a class. I do it for classes. I make sure that in classes we're doing that. But if I'm turning, no, I don't ever use calipers. At this stage, I don't. No. And then so I'll take off a little bit more here. Now this is very sharp. So I want to just soften that. That's what I just did there. That's nice point of entry there. Not so sharp. Not so sharp. So now what I'll do is I'll take the cut in a little further. That's probably the wall thickness I'm looking for now. Let's go back to my calipers. Yeah, it's just about there. I'd say that we have maybe 2 more cuts to go. If I increase the cuts to 3 or 4, it means 1. If it's 4 more cuts, it means 1. If it's 1, it means 4. How about that? Now I'm making sure that when I start my cut, I'm starting maybe a little bit more closed because I really don't want to see that wing come over. If that wing comes over, this bowl will really, in very dramatic form, not have a good day. It won't be having such a good day. I think I can take off 4 more passes. That means 1 more. Okay. I have enough, and by the way, this mass is gravely helping me out. I need that material. That is what's accounting for being able to hold this wall together to minimize the vibration. So I have not removed this material yet because I'm only looking to gain the clearance necessary to get closer to the wall. That's all I'm looking to do. And then this tool is not accounting for the wing cutting. It's only accounting for the micro bevel at the nose cutting. And it's very, very clean in here. It's cut like glass. And the micro bevel really makes a difference. Oh yeah, that's very thin. There we go. Just about right there. It's almost there. So, just underneath, and I think that we've got it. Into the corner. That's the cut. So that upper section's done. I can put this down. I'm not going to be using this anymore if I decide that this is my tool of choice to get into there. And that wall thickness is probably around maybe a little less than a quarter, maybe around a quarter or a little less. That's thin enough. Yeah, I'm very happy with that wall, actually. That's actually quite nice. And then anything on this exterior, that's just burnish marks from the bevel, so that's fine. I don't mind that. That means it's a sandable bowl ready to start at around probably 220.
So
Probably.
the idea with that tool, though, is you're
Yes.
using that to get into where the curvature
Starts to break. That's correct. That's correct. Where I would say the curve is about to break into a different direction. And so what I don't want to do, being that what I'm hitting is so initially, again, no, you don't. And all my fiber is facing this direction, okay? I have to be mindful of something that I am actually cutting I am cross-cutting very nicely in here, but if you take a look at what's happening, that's an uphill cut here. The trouble will be when I go back down where the end grain meets the side grain in this region. In that region, that's where all the sanding typically will take place. But that's why I use a gouge. You can't use a scraper in this region. Now hear me out, not because it's bad or you're not a good turner if you use a scraper in there. That's none of that nonsense. You can use a scraper in this region. The trouble will be that when the wall gets thinner, there's varying density in the thinner section, and of course the thicker to the thicker, and of course the multigrain hitting those regions will often mean that there will be a giant catch in this region. Who's ever had a giant catch in that corner before, right? Use a gouge. You got to use a gouge to cut it. If you cut it with a scraper, you'll have big problems. Now a negative rake scraper would be okay, but I don't want to sacrifice my grain for poor cuts. Yeah, same thing where you could use a round nose scraper, but put a bevel on the top side of the tool. That would account for having the tool not dig, so long as you're not applying a shearing angle, which just means rotating. If the tool is being used flat, you can use a negative rake scraper in there. If you're getting interested in bowl turning and you're learning that for the first time, now this is quite an advanced way to make a bowl, but it's an effective way. But if you're learning something for the first time, I'm not going to discourage someone from scraping an interior. It's okay to do that. It's okay to scrape it. It's okay to use a carbide tool. I'm not a fan of carbide, but you can use them if there's something like a physical ailment that you have, or you're not used to turning and you never have before, and it's going to be the thing that gets you to feel comfortable at the lathe and making the cut. Use a damn carbide tool. There's nothing wrong with that. So don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged. Stay with it, and that's the key. What I'm going to do now is realize I don't need this material anymore at the moment. Let's take this down a little bit more, okay? Let's take it down a little bit more. And I am done using this. I'm going to pass that around, okay? For yourself, okay? So we'll hog out a little bit more. And also, let's see if we can make a point. If I am to slow this down significantly, let's say take it down to like 200 RPM, I want to show you that just with those cuts that I've made, and that's withstanding not adding a lot of pressure. I mean, not much at all. Looks like I'm still in round. See, that's good. That's a good thing. I'm almost to the point to where when you get about to the mid region, the mid portion of your vessel, that's very likely that the cuts in this region are the ones that create more chatter and vibration just by way of the pressure of your cuts. These cuts matter a lot, and all of your cuts really need to be done with a tool, in my opinion, with a shorter wing and a steeper bevel, so that there's more bevel that's just tracing across your profile rather than digging. And this tool, again, this is a joke to me. This is a joke to try to put this in here and try to make a cut. I wouldn't ever begin to think that would be helpful, because it won't be, actually. Just the ergonomics, it's not because I think I'm right about something. The ergonomics won't actually support what you're doing, that's all. That's my perspective. It's not about why I'm right about something. Just making that point. So that's also why light cuts, regardless of the situation or what you want anyway. Higher speed's good. Higher speed supports a much softer touch, because I don't have to push the tool so hard. About 3 o'clock now, it wants to grab a little bit. So I'm trying to basically cut hollow cleanly enough that I'm not having to create more vibration in the piece. There we go. If I want to go straight in, this is a peeling cut. If all of my grain is facing this direction, I can peel and cut with the fiber. That's okay. Just don't ever swipe with it into end grain. Remember, where the bristles are right here is the position of where your end grain fiber is. Where that is where your end grain is. So if I pull that, what am I hitting? Pure end grain. Don't want to do that. So just keep that there. This is a cross cut. I can cut across the longer grain. Don't swipe though. This is a great way to get a little deeper into your vessel. I don't need this stock anymore. The wall thickness to the upper third is complete, so that's okay now. There we go. A little deeper, a little deeper. And eventually you can imagine that after I make this series of cuts, the tool rest will angle itself in a little bit more. That's just a little bit of stock removal, more like dust removal. And now what I'll do is be able to take my tool rest, go in a little bit more. And that's a good position to be. Now I can actually finalize this curve to maybe the mid to then bottom third region, and then the bottom third region, we almost have it. Then I'll show you guys how I make a jam chuck. There we go. That's great clearance. I can go ahead and actually account for having a steeper angle, make contact in there. Looking good. I'm happy with that. Sorry. Yeah, that's right. It's your fault. Yeah. There we go. And good taper there. And I'll go a little deeper here. Now I'm about picking up that bottom shelf of material, as you can see, or most of it. Now what I want to do is stop and check my wall thickness. It's likely that most of that stock removal was just the kind of stock removal needed to be able to get a little bit deeper into the piece and account for picking up what appears to be another little ridge down through here. That's through here. Now, yep, yes. It's a little higher. That's intentional. Yeah. I don't want to be in a position to where if I'm down here, for instance, if I'm in this region, I don't want to swing the tool around and then actually have that end grain fiber. Remember, here's our brush is kind of showing us where the end grain fiber is. I don't want the tool to meet an area where there's this cut is rife with end grain right now. So if I'm a little bit lower, the trouble will be this, I'll just be cutting up into it, and that will just almost be like scooping this piece off the lathe to heave it across the room. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that. So you want to be at an even plane with your end grain, and I find that the little bit higher you are towards the center, that you have a little bit more of the right direction of where the focus should be for your cuts. A little bit more balance. Mm-hmm. Correct. So here we go. Looks like I'm really close to getting my final wall thickness in here. It is never a bad idea to just take a brush, get rid of that. That'll be another way to do it. In terms of my height, let's see where I'm at now. Looks to be pretty good. We're about the dead center, just slightly higher. That's going to be an okay place to be. That's about what I want. It's very close. Okay. Letting that tool trace the surface. And in terms of what I have in here, let's see. Looks like I have a nice solid taper in there, or not a taper, but a nice round in there. And I'm tapering probably to around 3/8 of an inch right here. I'm about maybe 1/8 here, maybe 3/8 down here. So I have room to take one more pass. I mean, I'm losing count. So am I. Yeah. So. That should be a nice taper at that point. That's looking pretty good. That was my curvature in there. That's a nice curve. So we'll slow that down. Pretty sure that we're now at a place where we can readjust the tool rest a little bit to square it up a bit, remove a little bit more stock, and we're about home free. But anyway, that's a nice curvature in there. I like my sweep. That's a nicely turned piece in there. Good curve. Yeah, that's just it. So now what I'll do is I'll swing this back around. And this is not an easy bowl to cut clean in terms of the shape and the form, but you'll see that this is pretty nicely turned. I'm very happy with it. Nice wall thickness there. Back to the center, and doesn't hurt to sharpen the tool back up. If I'm at my bottom third region, it's probably a good idea to just get ourselves a fresh edge. Let's do that. Other thing that I'll do is make my micro bevel a little smaller. It's getting, and once you keep grinding on the main bevel, that bevel will lengthen. It'll get a little longer. I'm looking to have a micro bevel that's anywhere from around a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/4 of an inch. Mine was at 1/4 of an inch. I grind the tool enough. It was getting a little longer, so I've adjusted my bevel a little bit, if we can take a look at that. That's what I want to see right in there. Okay? Okay, so there we go. A little high now. Let's go ahead and lower it. Right at the dead center. Look at where my hands are. Choking up. Body makes the cut, not an aggressive cut. That means I could probably serve to account for a slightly steeper angle on the tool at the nose. It's digging a little bit too much. Can you imagine if I was using something like this, what would be doing? This is why people say expletive something, whatever it is. They say expletive, and then they say, I'm just scraping it. That's usually what happens. So I'm saying what you need to do is not scrape it, make a steeper bevel at the nose. So okay, and we're getting there. Okay. In terms of wall thickness, that's looking good. What I'm going to do right now, actually, as I see, or as I am looking into this, I'm not too far from being done, actually. I want to make sure that what I do is actually, is account for the bevel support that I need down in the region where I'm picking up this last little, there's a little shelf of material right in here. I wish that light worked so we could see in there. That light does not work. But either way, we'll have this bowl in your guys' hands soon enough. What I'm going to do is just make an adjustment and make this just a little steeper, make the nose a little steeper. I'm maybe looking to get this close to 65 degrees. So you can see adjustments are often necessary. That's an okay thing. That's a good thing. Adjustment means that you know it needs to be made and you just make it. That's all. All right, so into the nose we go. And that's just a steeper angle. That's all I'm looking to do. Now I can. And getting close to that just means that what I don't want to do is create a funnel, napkin ring, what have you. I don't want any of those things. So what I've done is I've increased the angle to be probably closer to 65 or 70 degrees. That's accounting for now being able to continue riding the bevel in this region all the way around to this area, to which at that point then I'll taper, or I'll lose the taper and then go back to being a little bit more centered. Oh, great, thank you. The light is good. You're great. So, looks like I can now pick up the cuts. This is a really good position to actually see what's happening. Hear that sound? That's a lovely sound because I'm not hearing any chatter. That's just the bevel sitting at a comparable angle to where the tool is sitting perpendicular, as it should. Shouldn't be pulling this way, shouldn't be pulling that way. It should just be taking that line of the contour in as easily as possible. And it looks like we did that just fine. And the surface that we're getting is marvelous. That's a nicely burnished surface. Really happy with that. And our taper's ending at a good spot too, so I'm happy with what we see in here. Sorry guys, I'm just trying to adjust so you guys have the best view of it. I think that's pretty good. Yep, that's it. In terms of the shape. Yes, I am. So I am because I'm in a position to where I'm at about maybe 2 o'clock, maybe 1:30, 2 o'clock, somewhere in that range, where I am. There is a rolling action. Now, you don't roll into oblivion, like you don't keep rolling and rolling and rolling. You're only rolling till you get to about a cutting position. In the case of hollowing, it's typically always at about 2 o'clock, 1 or 2, about 1 or 2. And so once you're there, you're home free, right? Right? and that thickness is good, I'll go ahead and maybe make 4 more cuts. That means 1, right? And then I should be able to pick up that cut in this region and really get a clean surface. This is getting a little annoying, and I think all I need is the light over there. It looks like we can still, actually think that that's helping us out more visually. Is that the curvature sweep that I want? Yes, it is. It's about right what it should be. That's it. So now I'll clean that dust out, and then it looks like we're going to then take our tool rest back to the center position, slightly tapered in still, because I still want a runoff point in this region. That's to say, having pressure over here is still going to be helpful. But let's move this in a little bit. That's the curve I want. That's nice. Okay, I'm happy with that. If I can say it's nice, I feel good about that, because I'm very critical of my work. I'm at a level of turning that I have a very strong level of it needing to be accurate, and I want it to be quality, and that's quality. That's nice. Happy with that. Oh, we have a bandsaw. Who wants to see this cut in half after I? No? Everyone, yeah, actually, everyone hates it, or they're like, yeah, or there's just, it creates dissension amongst the group. Dissension. Now I can reposition this, and that's very thin over here. That's thin enough to where, got to be careful now. It's really thin. I don't think you can see light through it yet, but it's not far. I want to make sure that's really tight, but this is a pretty thin vessel. Back to the center. If you hear that sound, that's a pure cut. That's commentary on just, again, adjusting the angle at the bevel in this bottom third region, more or less. Maybe over here, about that region. That's making all the difference. Picking up a line very nicely with that micro bevel. That's actually working out quite well. So one thing to know is this. If I'm starting my cuts here now, this is a bad situation. You don't want to start with the position where and don't look so much here. Look at the handle up here. If you look at the lathe right here, this is a bad position. This is a plunge hollowing position. This will make sure that the thin section that I've cut in this region, it will turn into a napkin ring. I promise. It's going to be the prettiest funnel you'll ever have. Prettiest funnel you'll ever have. I don't want that. I'm looking to make sure I can actually have the bevel ride on the surface in here, and I'm trying to move the handle and so it's closer to a position that it will be either perpendicular and running with this side of the bed on this side of the bar of the bed, not here, but on this side. I want to pull this as much as I can so that the bevel is running in alignment with that surface, because down to that little ridge in here, it's exactly what I want in terms of the shape, in terms of the cleanliness, all the above. Just sweeping that bevel back a little just to pull some dust out. Just pull a little dust out. Yeah, that's correct. So what I'm aiming, yeah, so exactly. If I'm to take a plunge cut right in that area and just take off probably any more than 1/8 of an inch, that thing's going to come right off. What do you think? Should I do it? I think I'll go for it, right? It's fun. So let's do it. Okay, that's nice. Looking to see now just by stopping the lathe to make sure I don't have any chatter marks in there. Okay, I think that's pretty nice. I think we picked that up pretty well. Light to the touch now. Always been, but we're going to stay there. There we go. The thing I have to remember in this region is that when I'm actually making these cuts and removing that fiber in here, this is all end grain fiber in here. When I make that cut directly into that region, it's basically just I'm cutting directly into an end grain wall and just pulling a lot of fiber. Have to be really careful with that. Trying to find an adjustment here for us, guys. My bad. Looks like that's probably okay. So when I take the tool through here, that's all a wall of end grain that I'm hitting when I come this way. So just know that. Have to be a little careful. Also, can I please see, is there a pair of figure 8 calipers? I do want to check my wall thicknesses here. Do you think I could find a pair of those? It's down here. I can't get my fingers all the way down there. I can get pretty close. But either way, we have a really thin vessel here. This will be nice. This will be nice for you guys to have. And that curvature is nice. Yeah. There it is. That's the cut I want. So what I'm looking to do now, as can maybe be imagined, is what I want to do is maybe take a cut that's peeling, a peeling cut. Don't swipe. There we go, all the way down. And now what I'll do is take off a little material. There we go. That's a nice sound. It means that I am at the right bevel angle. I don't hear the tool chirping at me. Tool's not crying and chirping. What do you know? That's something. Thank you. That's just the heel of the tool. And that's a good shape in there. Happy with that. I love saying that and actually meaning it. I'm actually happy with that. You have to cheer yourself on, as you can see. See, you have to stay with it. So. Getting a little thin. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's it. That's a nice curve. And then pretty soon we'll take a look at seeing where our depth is. I'm curious where I'm at, actually. I'm down there far enough.
There's some regular calipers behind that.
Yeah, those are good. That's good. Thank you. I appreciate you guys getting those. I need like a figure 8, but this will still be okay. If I know the depth, then I can pretty much tell where I'll be at. There's the, okay. Okay, I'm almost where I want to be exactly, actually. I'm getting close to where I want to be. I'm actually looking to probably end my cuts somewhere just right to where the end of the platform meets the shoulder. That's about where I want to be so that I could actually preserve close to 3/8, maybe just under 3/8 of an inch of material there, and account for still maybe removing enough to true up this 10 in the second time when it's in a jam chuck, and then remove maybe 1/4 of an inch, and I'll probably be at around maybe just proud of 1/4 of an inch in my base. It's pretty close. Interior is really nicely turned. I'm very happy with that surface. That's very clean. This could be sanded with probably 220, and I would probably put oil in this and sand it. I'd probably wet sand it. Also, I don't need that much speed now. I have the wall whipping around enough. I'm looking to lower the speed to decrease the vibration, minimize it. And so I'm probably down to maybe 1,500 right now, which to me is not terribly fast. Yeah, I'll speed it up a little bit more. I'm closer to the chuck now, right on the face of that interior wall, that more or less flat section. As long as I can get this to just curve a little bit and bring this forward, firstly with the bevel. If the bevels, hear that sound here? That's a thin wall, firstly. But secondly, that's just the bevel supporting the material. So I shouldn't even pick up any dust in that region, and I'm not. That's a good thing. That's a sign that I'm at a place where if the tool's already perpendicular enough to make a cut, and all I have to do is go, if you watch this region, go here to make it. I'm not moving it up enough to make it uncomfortable in the final pass, in this final sweep, to get that interior. So I'm good where I'm at. I'm running right directly into that wall of material. And we're at a really good depth right now. I find it's easier to actually sweep a profile when the bevel's tracing a contour that's actually on an arc. If it's just dead flat, you have to remove a little bit of material still to account for that bevel to ride a little bit further up from where your ridge had been from the last cut that you'd made all the way into your center. So let's see where we're at now. And that's a good cut. I'm happy with seeing that. That's going well. Oh yeah, that's it. In terms of the sweep. And about one more cut. Something that's always a bit of a pain in the center, and this happens a lot with most of my students. They say, I created a dimple, or I created something on the outside, a little, something that's like a dimple or an innie or an outie in there, right? Something like that. And the reason for that is that you're putting too much pressure or not enough in this region. You have to slow the feed rate of the tool down because your centrifugal force is mostly picked up to your highest speed in here and here. So here and here, it's faster, right? In the very dead center in that region, it's quite a bit slower. Slow the feed rate down to be more comparable to the bevel on a surface that's also that with the advantage of being closer to the jaws can account for really decreasing the amount of vibration. Okay, there we go. That's just accounting for creating a little bit of a corner. That's allowing me to then be in this position here. No bevels, no cut yet. That's actually a good thing. That means I'm right about to pick up the cut. There it is. Almost done. Almost done. That's so close. It's about done. Just need to make sure that the sweep is there. That's really close. I have a innie right now. There's a very slight innie. It's almost gone. But that interior, I want us to shine a light through there if we can. Or sorry, if I can say, I want us to look in there and I want you to see. I want you to look for tear out. You won't see anything. That's what you want to see. Just a milled surface. So, burnish mark. Relax. It actually is though. But you'll see it. Burnish marks are acceptable because they'll sand right out with 220 or higher, actually. I love it, though. But I have an innie right now. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. I have to just that means I have to start a little bit higher up. And it's actually easier to eliminate an innie if you create an outie. And there's one. And then remove a little bit of that stock. It's barely touching that surface. Barely touching it. And now in terms of depth, let's see where we're at. There it is. Thin enough for you? So let's see where my depth's at. And it looks like I'm almost, what's nice is that I actually can account for a few more cuts. Because I'm actually ending up right at the very end of my platform. And I want to just preserve around 3/8 of an inch of material. So actually being where I'm at is not a bad situation. What I'll do now is that since I have I'm going to get a brand new edge here. 2 cuts, right? 3 cuts. This is about 3 cuts. But that interior is nice. The wall thickness is good. I'm happy with what's there. This could be something that if I wanted to start sanding at a much higher grit, that's the point of being able to do it. If you can cut it with the gouge, life gets a little easier. Okay, that'll be all right. Let's try that out. So this taper is good. My wall thickness is good. Or, I don't know, it's not much of a thickness, it's the thinness. Can you say wall thinness, too? Wall thinness is a thing, too, isn't it? That's pretty thin. Yeah, curvature sweeps just a little off because of the implosion here. I need to make sure I come back. There we go. There's the curve I want. That's it. So now, bevel support. It's essentially the same grind. What's different about it is that on that tool, it's a very flat wing. So the trouble with that to me is that what it ends up doing is it imparts too much wing and it actually doesn't cut near as clean. Because I'm making sure my cut's right on the nose. If you put a full wing on that surface, maybe on a larger diameter stock on a much more open form, that grind probably works quite a bit better. But on an interior like this, I would never want to use that. Wouldn't ever use it. Now I'd have catches all day long. I wouldn't use it. Wouldn't use it. So if you use that tool, you probably end up using this swept-back grind there. I would probably be using that a little further down, and then maybe switch over to, but this is not conducive to anything but creating a wall, going through the wall, just about. That's mostly what it does. But what I'm actually doing right now is for the sake of getting to a particular depth that accounts for removing the stock that I need to. So I'm happy with what I have here. That's about exactly what I want. I'm happy with that. I'll call it done. So, but this will be fine. Now, in terms of my depth, I do want to know my final depth. No tear out whatsoever. Okay. Are you back? And I'm exactly at the shoulder, I'm right at the shoulder, essentially, right at the shoulder. So it's never a bad thing to know that. In fact, I need to know that. I really want to know that, and I need to know that. I was looking to be able to rub the bevel enough to do something. And what this is a reference to is that when I do this, the reason I do this so much is so that I can actually pick up the infinitesimally small amount of dust that goes into the flute that accounts for knowing that if I see it, well, I'm actually making a cut, not really, until I actually pick up that ridge. But it'll pick up anything 1/16 of an inch or less. And as long as I'm picking that up, and the ridge that I'm looking to then pick up to continue the sweep of the contour will likely pick right up. So as long as I see that dust and I see the burnish first, burnish dust, then actually see that little ridge, and then pick it up, that's typically when I know I'll pick it up. Okay. You just don't, but I watch that dust a lot. I always do this. I always look for the dust in the flute right before I actually enter the cut that continues the sweep into that little ridge. Yeah. Yep. And what I'm going to do now is I have a piece of ash right here. And what I'm going to do, guys, is make a jam chuck with this. You guys already have a couple pieces of some pretty cool pieces that your club will be able to work on or have it for your auction. Yeah. You guys. Yeah, I do. Yeah, that would be something that I would wet sand. Probably mineral oil. I usually use just mineral oil. And then what I'll do is that when I finish with that, I would put I would wet sand up to probably well, I start at about 220. I'll start at 220. I can actually start the wet sanding at 220, 320, 400. And then what I do is I'm wiping off my excess after each grit, filling the pores with my dust and the sort of slurry of the dust and oil. Never using don't ever use anything poly-based. I wouldn't wet sand that with water because it's dry. So it doesn't need water in it. The pores won't react properly with water going into that surface. They would with green wood, of course. And I wet sanded bowls all the time, green. But this would be something that I would put oil on and I'd sand up to 400. Then I'd go, after 400, I'd do probably 400 with wax and 600 with wax, wipe that excess off and then buff the surface. And that's more of a food safe sort of kind of homemade pumice style finish. And that's what I would apply for something like that. That's mostly what you see on these types of finishes. This is that type of finish as well. That hasn't been touched for probably about 1.5 years, but that finish is really, it's a food safe finish still. I don't use that bowl, but that's the type of finish that piece would have. Just a very fine sheen without looking like plastic. I don't like shiny finishes that look like plastic. I like wood to look like wood. So, but it should look finished to me, as an opinion, But well, the difference is this in terms of, let's just talk about tool application. You will never cut a bowl that clean if you use a scraper. Ever. You'll never cut it that clean. Not an opinion, actually. Ergonomics of how the tools are working inside and on exterior, in conjunction with orientation of the grain, right speed, a little bit of time spent, sometimes making an adjustment with the bevel. That's all it is. Okay. It's not a. So let's put this back on, folks, and we'll eventually get this. We'll get this to you so you get some other photos of it if you're so inclined. Okay. Okay. That's a good hold there. Good enough. I'm going to shorten the length of this jam chuck. I don't need all of this bulk here. Actually, I'm going to shorten it quite a bit. And we'll see that. So it'll be kind of fast and furious. And then for that case, I'll probably use probably 3/8 or ½ inch, 3/8 flute, ½ inch stock. I'm just cutting with the nose, so I'm not taking too aggressive of a cut. This will probably be the tool that we cut the flange with. We're going to create a little flange and a lip that will account for us being able to true this up. Thank you, Janet. So a little bit higher speed. I think that because this is so far off the woodworm screw, I do believe we will actually apply some tailstock support. I'm trying to think. I do, yeah. I typically do, yeah. I don't use faceplates often, not because they're bad, evil, or they're not. They don't help. But they don't help when you lose a screw in the wood. That sucks. And whenever that happens to you enough, if it happens to you over 3 to 5 times, you'll never use a faceplate ever again. They suck. And then they break off in the material. So just that is not something that's something that slows me down enough that my opinion on faceplates is not very high. I don't have a high opinion of faceplates. Not because they're not safer. Oh, something. If I was doing something like that, then we're having a different conversation. Yeah, absolutely. That's just different. Absolutely. So different conversations, and for what's relevant, absolutely. Not saying in general they're bad. You know, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the reference for what we're doing here, in terms of the way of it being safe enough and appropriate enough to apply. That's all. So let's just true this up. I'm going to shorten this blank significantly. Higher speed. If I lose fiber support, it looks like this. Like that. If I'm taking off quite a bit more than that, then I will see that tear on the other side a little bit. I don't want that. Just a reference point to why I came back the other way when we were actually doing the demo. Higher speed now. This is where the mainstay of vibration is, so we're safer to make these cuts. Oh, I forgot. This thing loads really quick. Yeah, I usually take, when I'm roughing out, I take very heavy aggressive cuts when I'm actually shaping. But we'll try to slow the cuts down a little bit. I just want to make sure that we have time. What time is it? Is it accurate? Oh, nice. We have time. We'll probably get into something else too. That's great. The line that I'm cutting to is going to show how much material I actually want for the jam chuck. So about that much. I don't need all this material. I want this to be a little bit closer to the chuck so that there's no vibration that transfers through the longer portion of my grain here. I don't really want that. So for cuts like this, a swept back wing is fine. This is okay. That should get us most of the way there. That's very sharp. I will go ahead and soften that. If you're right-handed, you like to wear shavings. If you're left-handed, you like to shoot them at someone else. That's left-handed. trying to play a game of guess that width of the opening of the bowl. I don't know what it is. I certainly can't tell from here. Yeah, I can't quite tell. Let's move this in a hair. That works too, doesn't it? If you have a reference point, such as just a little lip right here, this should give me a good idea as to how much material I should be taking off. How much material I should be taking off. I wish I could project a little bit more, guys. I apologize for that. Okay, let's see that bowl if I could. Yep, that turns out that's pretty thin. Yeah. Yeah, I guess the thin wall vessel already happened. So let's get through this though. Let's see where I am in relation to the lip that I've cut here. I think I'm off. And how off am I? Solid inch probably. Not too far from about maybe here. That's about 3/4 of an inch. Close to it. If you have about 1/4 of an inch lip, you'll be able to tell where you're at. You'll find it. Calipers do make life a lot easier if you have a set with you. I just don't have mine with me. Let's see where that is. I bet you that's pretty close. Or way off. Oh, it's way off. Okay. You want to be overfit. That's way overfit. About as overfit as you can get. So we'll take off about 1/4 of an inch at a time. Let's see what that does. Now again, swept back gouge is perfect for this. This is my 1/2 inch. And works really. So I wanted to make sure that what I didn't have was when I have a jam chuck, I usually don't have the width of the thickness of the piece exceed about 2.5 inches in terms of height. That's because I don't want, there is a little bit more vibration that can be, that I find that can be a problem if I do have that present in the piece, if I'm further away. I want to make sure that I'm moving that up closer to the face of the jaws. I find I don't have as many issues with the vibration. So that's a little slow. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. I'm just focusing on creating a taper. Basically, if you don't have calipers, you just cut a taper until you find the spot that it fits. That's pretty close, actually. It's not too far. Pretty close. Calipers are nice, but sometimes it's fun to do it without it, just so people can see the process without needing to use the caliper. The flange is a little long, but I'm going to shorten that, and finding the taper is important. I'm probably only looking to go about half the length of that taper. I also don't need all that as a shoulder. I'd rather do this. Have about a small eighth to quarter of an inch, nice and flat, and then a region where I sweep this back. If I sweep this back a little bit of loose in the handle. Now I have an area that if this were to jam on and I have like a little V-groove in here, it's where you put your flathead screwdriver when the piece is overfit and you don't have to smack the piece, you just hit that little crevice right there. Just above the shoulder. So that's what that is. And I'll shorten this. I think we're close to the final fit though, actually. We're getting really close. High speed, guys, is very helpful. That's high speed cut. So we're close to a jam chuck. As long as we're cutting a taper, we're good. What will be the key to the fit is a slight tweak in the taper, which will be more of a slightly, an ever so slight bow-shaped edge. So there we go. We're getting close, and just about.
You're basically creating a shelf.
Yeah. I think that's about there. Okay. Not so bad. So that's pretty good. However, it's the kind of fit that you want is one where you, when you pull back on this, see, I want to know that I have a little bit more support than that. That's not quite there. You should be able to actually pull back on your lip here, from where your fit is. That's a pretty good fit. That's a good start to it. And I should be able to put all my weight backwards on the heels of my feet and then lean back as if I know that someone here, a good friend of mine, will catch me before I fall off the cliff, right? Good friend of mine, yeah, great friend, go way back, right? All that. So we're there. Just need to make sure that I extend this lip a little bit forward, a little bit more so than that, and we'll be good. And just adding a little bit of material should help with this. That's to say that I'm turning a taper a little bit. I'm sort of increasing my taper, and we'll see where that goes. We'll see what that does for us. That sounds better. Oh, that's very thin. Yeah, no, and that's so thin. Actually, there's a section of it there where that's actually you can press on that, and you'll see your finger flex the wall. It's that thin. So it's fun to do. It's even more fun when they work out. So I'll make the same cut, but just take off dust. And I can also go directly into the corner and swipe it that way. Let's see what that did for us. That's looking pretty good. What is the crack line? Not the crack line, but the gap here is pretty even. I imagine this might just cinch right up. It's very close. That's really good. Just needs 5 more cuts. That just means 1. 1 is 5 and 5 is 1. Yeah, I think that's it. Really trying to be careful here because I don't want to. I mean, there's enough to get out of a demo, but it's like you want to get far enough to not have to ruin the piece, right? I think that's fair. That's right. But that's so thin that this could actually just implode like that. It's actually that thin. So let's do our test for the fit. So the fit is I just lean back like this, and literally I'm going to lean back like I'm putting all my weight back, okay, at the nose. And that's a good fit. That's a good hold. Should be. I like it. Yeah, that should stay. Might wonder why I'm using this tool. I'm using it because I'm actually going to make some uphill cuts first. That actually helps to center the piece and throw the piece on continually to the lip. I'm shortening the bevel now too. That's about what I want to see. Just a slightly shorter bevel. Right in there. So my final depth can be read right here. Final depth's right there. I will actually go ahead and sweep this down a little further. I will do that by way of some push cuts first. I want to actually initially establish wall thickness in the base. So I will actually take off probably about this much material, maybe that much first. Maybe about right in there. So let's act as though we don't have tailstock support. We pretty much don't. But if you look at that wall right in here, that surface is flexing. So I cannot take this up any higher than that. I am tapering down here enough to where I can probably sweep some material into this region, but I have to very much mind an area that is so thin that I better get it right. The depth of the foot, in terms, well, this isn't going to, the aesthetic. So the size, so the diameter that I'm going to go down to is firstly going to be created by way of getting rid of the thickness that will account for the final thickness right between the interior, the lowest portion, and the lowest portion of my exterior. And that's going to be around 1/4 of an inch. It's around 1/4. It's close to that. So I'm going to remove that material first. So this little gray line, that's going to get me enough to get that material away. And then at that point, then I'll start blending, making a series of uphill cuts, because I'm hoping to actually throw this onto the shoulder on this piece right here. That's what I'm looking to do. Okay. So anyway, let's remove some material. Now it does seem counterintuitive to spin this fast, but I need to make sure that I have a sharp tool and I'm not taking heavy cuts. And I'm also cutting cherry, so that's helpful. That's thin. Hear that? If I can help it, most of the cuts going towards the center are a better thing. So that's the material I'm taking off. That in terms of thickness that I'm removing, that's all I really need to do to remove some stock initially. Need to back this off just a hair. Actually, I think I'll get a better result with a slightly sharper micro bevel. It's a little too blunt, and it's actually putting too much bevel into the surface, and that could actually be the amount of pressure that I don't need. So I'm going to increase the angle a little bit. Should be all right. Let's see what we got. That's cutting exactly the way I want it to now. I hope I haven't just cursed myself. I suppose you could. I would rather just reshape the tool a little so that I can have that's what I would rather do. I'd rather reshape the tool slightly. The bevel was a little too steep. I needed that to go as deep as I was on this interior. God, that's thin. I'm happy with it though. But I would say that what I needed to do was just that, so that I could make sure that I didn't have to raise the handle as much. If you raise or lower, you're going to exert too much force onto the. That's better. So let's see if so being that I know that that's about the amount of material I'll take off, what I'll do is probably make a series of push cuts. Push cuts are going to be better because they're putting the weight and pressure up towards the headstock. That's a good thing. So we're getting into a pretty decent blend right now, I'd say. We're getting there. So that's pretty good in terms of a general shape right there. I think that I may actually, I might put a bead right here too. That's a possibility. I might actually put a little reverse curve there. Who wants to see a bead there? Potentially a bead? Maybe. We'll see. Thin. It's thin. So yeah, 2 beads. I'll put. Have to be really careful in here. Well, the whole thing I have to be careful. Let's go ahead and see if we can get rid of that material at the center. It's spinning really slow at the center. My thumb is just right on the top of the flute. This isn't the wisest cut because I'm actually taking the piece off of that little lip. That's not smart either, but it's worth the risk. So I like where that curvature is. That sweeps nice. And if I did put something there, I'm wondering if I actually even should. Yeah. Captive ring, he says. You can do a captive ring. Oh. Believe it or not, the spear is a good tool for this area right here. That's not a joke. He's laughing at this like it's funny. No, it is a little crazy. Yeah, that really just needs I think I need to get I'm looking at what's obstructing the line here, and if there is anything, and I just don't think that needs to be there. I don't think it does. So this will be something that I take probably down with the spear. Okay, what do we got here? Got to make sure that all your cuts are real clean and crisp. If you can help it. No force of dig and feed needs to go into that region right here. I will put some beads on the base for sure. Let the wood come to the tool. Spinning a little slower at the center, it wants to dance around that nose of the tool. If that jumps onto the right side of the nose, that's a bad thing. It's going to come flying. And I'm not signing up for that, but you know, things happen. Let's make that slightly concave. 800. That's about same cutting speed. I'm probably a little less than. I'm probably about 18 to 2000, 1800 to 2000 right now. Yep. Pretty much home free once I get past this base. But it's still pretty thin down here. It's about 1/4 of an inch. No one wants to see this cut in half, huh? No one wants to see it cut in half. No, I understand. I know that's a little crazy. Maybe we'll just roll something here, this little bead. It's not quite a bead, but it's getting there. There we go. So that's down enough that I can make that cut. The overhand grip's just to make sure that the point of entry of the cut's not skating around at the nose. Okay, so let's see about a spear. A little faster. Yeah, I really just think that this form doesn't need the... Sorry that you guys can't see that right there, but we're doing pretty good there. Oh, no, it looks like you're good. Thank you. Can't sweep too much. This is about paper thin, not far above this line. Don't have much support from it, much material at all. But most of the mass is gone. Just making sure to perfect the line. That's thin. Yeah, that's the form. Yeah, a couple beads and we're done. Making sure that my blend is nice and true. A lot of pressure into the tool rest. Really no excuse for anything other than that. Making sure my line is nice. It's just about there. Have a slight bump right in this region, little undulation. Other than that, we have a nice vessel here. Would have been nice to sand this too, but I'm glad we focused primarily on the cuts because that's what we needed to see. But that is a good piece. Okay. That's just beveling that surface. It's quite sharp. That's good. Lower that a little bit. There we go. And so we'll roll some beads, guys. V-groove. What did you say, 4? How about 5? That good? 5's good. I wanted to define those a little clearly than what they are. They just look like a series of V-grooves. There we go. Now the tool's drifting. Those are the beads that I want, okay? Make that slightly concave. There it is. Then when you're done, just grab it. There it is.
Oh, like that.
Yep. Now we can look at it. So that's the vessel that I like right there. That's a nice form. That's something I like. I'm okay with that. Pretty. I'll show you guys a very different way to hollow onto the interior of a natural rim vessel. And we're not going to, so we won't be scraping actually at all. You might think, oh, you're probably going to scrape that. No, I'm not. I'm not going to scrape that. I'm going to cut it, burnish it, and scrape it at the same time. We'll talk about that when we're doing that. We'll do it all at once. So in terms of center, I want to make sure that the piece that's not as lopsided is going on this side. I'm going to be truing up both sides. I will probably just go ahead and find a center just by a mark here. Getting center is close enough if you can just find it. And what that's to say is that a natural rim isn't going to be perfectly symmetrical anyway. So I don't want my center to be here. I want my center to be as centered to the eye as I can make it. And that's looking pretty good to me. That's good enough. And that's good enough for me too. I just want it to be centered enough and that the more symmetrical side is on the headstock side. Say it again? Yeah, yeah. It's a little off, yep. Sometimes it is. And we'll just go between centers. But initially, what I'll use is a bull gouge to true up the exterior. Actually, oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. That makes life a lot easier. You are a big help, actually. I appreciate it. I'm sure everyone else out there does too. So, yep. It's a lot of help. Takes a village, huh? Ugh. So, just need enough play to account for one thing only, the 4 prongs making pure contact on the face here, but also not so much play that beyond the indexing, I can then actually move the piece in the prongs. Shouldn't be any movement there. And if I see a little, cinch it up maybe one more time to make sure you're good. That should be fine. Not going to go super fast yet. I'll be fast enough. Might be super fast to someone anyway, though, in here. But turning faster is a good thing. And we'll go over to an interior-exterior tool, actually. This still works great to true up an exterior. We'll eventually get to a skew. Right now, this is going to be the area I hollow into. That's a little slow. I don't mind actually moving the tool rest around if it's about that slow on an exterior. That's going to be okay. So on an exterior, there we go. So I'll make a cut, being that our orientation is entirely different. We're running with the bed. Let's now make a cut that is, oh, whoops. Let's actually tighten that down. There we go. Yep, that's for you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Truing up the face in this case is just commentary on coming in to just true up that corner here. Go a little faster too. And looking good. Yeah, birch is lovely. Who doesn't love birch? I love birch. And just removing vibration as well, as can probably be seen. That's a good speed now. This will be the side I'd determine that the tendon's going to be on more likely, right here. I'll go to the other side here just to go ahead and account for getting rid of the vibration and just taking a look at the quality of my end grain fiber. Same cut, just cutting with the left wing now. Just to help true that up. Okay, there we go. And I'll put a tenon on this side, tailstock side. That's the speed I want to be at. Now we can go over to skew. Oop. Oop, looks like I'm jammed in there a bit. There's the others. And that's pretty decent tenon there. Okay. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm happy with what I see here. I'm not going to make, I'll probably shorten this side a little bit, but we'll make a nice little natural edge bowl from this. What I'm going to show you is how a micro bevel actually goes to account for being able to change the physics of the cut when we're cutting into end grain fiber. And we're not going to be using a scraper. We do not need one. We can actually just account for making our cuts with a bowl gouge. So we're going to show you back hollowing, and we're going to show you how an interior exterior tool still works for cutting one of these as well. This will be basically what we're doing in our class tomorrow. So I'll just make a little quick version of that here. Again, we'll go ahead and move the tailstock all the way back. Good question. So yes is the short answer, but no is the longer answer. Let's bridge the gap with a abridged version of that answer, that story. On a side grain piece, the trouble is that you're putting the 4 prongs into an area where you're due to the pressure from the tailstock, is going to cause the grain to implode because the orientation is, well, on, there we go again. I hate that sound. I love it. I'm learning it. Thank you. So my fiber would be here if I'm putting a tailstock and making a normal natural rimble side grain. Trouble is that if I put lots of pressure into this region from the tailstock support, again, I'll create a drilling action on this side more or less because it's softer fiber, and then whatever I put on this side will be the pressure that causes the grain to implode. The consequence is just that I'll have a lot of vibration in my piece when I'm turning it, and so that piece will either drill closer towards the center of the piece, or actually it will keep creating a drill effect and cause dig, and that's really not going to be good. It's going to be bad. Just a lot of vibration that you don't need. So you can do it, and it's not the end of the world, and then being that you can still true up a bowl the second time before you're about to hollow, you can justify saying, oh, well, that's what I know anyway, so I'll just do that. That's fair enough. I wouldn't do it just because in the process of shaping, I don't want that much vibration. I want to do it correctly enough to make sure I'm accounting for not having so much of that. That's all. That's all. Back to my favorite speed. So a good grip here is going to be imperative. Actually, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't. I actually say I wouldn't mind the usage of the serrated jaws in this case either. So that's a good hold. I'm happy with that. Let's shorten the blank maybe a little bit. In the class, we're going to go over the importance of shortening the blank for finding balance, but also seeing that we want to be able to now do some layout. I'm looking to actually remove all this stock, but keep maybe about a solid 1/2 inch of material in here. But let's firstly just true this up a little bit more. Why don't we do that? Give ourselves a fresh edge as well while we're at it. A very small micro bevel, because if I'm going to hollow into end grain, I have to have a very, very thin micro bevel strip. Very thin. I want you guys to see typically what I have right there. So that's about what I want to see. You can probably just put that up there and just show everyone if you could for a second. Thank you. I appreciate that. There we go. So we'll go ahead and go a little faster than that. So I'm going to remove some stock, folks. Pretty nice grind there, or pretty nice, I should say, removal of stock. Birch. Downhill cuts now. Just shortening the blank a little bit, that's all. Just want a slightly different approach here. All downhill. Not quite. A little bit more. Now I'll do a little bit of shaping with the larger skew on my exterior. That's probably a good depth right there, or a good length. I think that's probably where I should be at the moment. Downhill. There we go, fresh edge. When you grind a skew, you always have to be able to know that it's important to grind both sides of the tool. Do both sides of your bevel. There we go. And I'm looking to preserve about a half of an inch of material, maybe about this much. And then what we'll eventually see is a nice curved transition from here. And where you see that area, that's a little parting line. That's where we'll actually remove the piece. You'll see that I've removed a little bit of stock here. And you can also accentuate this pretty nicely with a different tool. We can maybe go to an interior-exterior now. Getting just a simple profile. Essentially, it's an OG sweep. So basically, cove to a half bead. Looks like the gouge is working a little bit better at the moment. We'll stick with that. Okay, that's going to be okay. So let's do a little bit of interior hollowing. How about that? And we'll actually use a detail gouge for that. Fresh edge. Just to get a little depth. And we'll do a little back hollowing. This is kind of fun to see because back hollowing is a cool thing to show. Basically cutting upside down a little bit. Here we go. So we're going to be hollowing in here just a little bit. Show you guys a back hollowing cut. Because instead of going forward, I'm pulling from the interior and actually pulling out this way. So what's going to happen is I'll come in at the nose of the tool, bevel rubbing. Account for some depth. Then eventually create a drilling action. Helps, yeah, because I'm cutting with the grain now. When I pull, I'm actually pulling with the left wing with a little bit of bevel support, accounting for a little bit of depth. I can also pull and open this a little bit wider. I don't want to do that so much until I actually really get my actual final depth in there, so that's going to be good. What I need to do this, I actually need to clean this, the thread. Thread needs to be cleaned with something, with a compound. That's what it really needs. Say what? Oh, did you? Man, it must be just the grain material that it must be that it's not doing so well. It's really stuck. Yeah, probably just a little oil. And if you take a brush to it, I have a brush. If I work with really heavy tannins, this is what you want to put in there. Then I'll come right out. But I'll switch over to using an interior exterior here. And you guys will see that actually we can change the physics of the cut quite simply. And we can make make the same cut as we just did when we were hollowing. So long as we're using an interior tool that has a very small micro bevel, we can actually do that quite effectively. Higher speed helps too. So I shouldn't be able to cut in this way, but I will. Because you can. Only reason you can make this cut is because of the micro bevel. And I'll firstly just come in. How's that for you?
That's great.
Is it great?
A little more of that, too.
I got more coming your way. I'm not trying to do that, though. I'm actually not trying to do that. I'm sorry. I'm mostly sorry. I can also open up the interior a little bit by pulling to the left. That's cutting a pure shaving because I'm actually cutting with the grain. And that just means I need to adjust the tool rest position. I'm going to actually make my final wall thickness on my exterior. So here we go in a little further. It's good exercise to make these. There we go. Need to get this thin enough. It doesn't have to be perfectly thin. I want to make sure that, again, most of my shapings actually, to get the final wall thickness will come from my exterior. But you guys will eventually see a surface in here that's absurdly clean. And that's just because we're using that micro bevel. So I'm actually burnishing, scraping, and cutting kind of at the same time. It's mostly just a burnish. Open up that interior just a little bit more. I can pull to my left, that's fine. A couple different ways to look at hollowing into end grain. This is just one. It works. And there we go. So that interior, I want you guys to see the surface we have cut. Scraped, actually. It's scraped and burnished, but it's also it's wanting to cut. The reason, so what you can never do in here, guys, you cannot ever take a single bevel and put it in there. You will always, this thing will be thrown out violently if you do that. You can't do that. It will not work. Will not work. So
You need a micro bevel.
yeah, no, you can't put a single bevel. So you can put a secondary and a micro in there. So this tool, this will be fine. You can apply that. If you make a cut with something that has a single bevel, just kind of like this. Only tool that I have that has a single bevel is this one anyway. But if this isn't just pulling, I mean, you're in a bad way. If you just take a single bevel in here, there's too much force of dig and feed with a single bevel that will throw too much edge into wood that actually can't be cut. It has to be scraped. But if you use a micro bevel, you can cut it, and there's no tear out on that surface whatsoever. It's very clean, very clean. So just saying, with that, that's something to look at. I think on my exterior now, I'll just kind of bring this in a little bit more. Really have to choke up so that I can account for having a little support around the wall. It's very thin now, thin enough. So now I'll go a little deeper and do some back hollowing. Good segment done right there. That's about done, about finished. To the center, just to add a little drilling action. Maybe the light will help us and see a little too. How about that? Is that okay, guys? Left wing's making the cut. It'll go back in. Add a little bit more depth. Other option is with an interior tool. I can see the light. That's correct. That's on the left wing. Well, you're good with the skew now. You're crazy. And with the shorter bevel, sometimes you actually need a little bit longer. I look at the angle that I'm kind of at right there. That can be an issue. So typically when you do this, I actually prefer using the spindle gouge, but you can create a nice shaving with that tool. I do prefer having a sharper angle, though. Sharper angle is a little better. Say it again? Yes. I'm a little bit, yeah, I'm a little to the right of center. Well, it would have been better. In this case, it actually helps to have a tool that's a little bit sharper of an angle. That's not going to catch now. You'll see that. That's about my depth now. I don't think I need to go deeper than that, just for something like this. And I can also open this up a little bit more. Say that again? Yes, that's okay, but you don't ever want to use you don't ever want to use a single bevel to take a cut like this, or and just go straight in like that. You'll have a terrible cut. This thing will fly out. But you can use a micro bevel to cut end grain. That's something that nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about that. I just think that it's not promoted because people just don't do it, because it's not correct. Actually, it's not correct. But if you have a small, thin strip of micro bevel, you're pulling in so little edge, you can actually get away with the physics of it. You can change the physics a little bit of it. I'll show that. So with this, let's finalize our wall thickness, get down to about that depth, and then we can work on our exterior a little bit. Getting a little thinner than that. It's very thin either way.
Why wouldn't you cold cut it from the center on the side nearest you versus going up the opposite side?
You can just a different method. So, but good question. So the cut that I'm making with the back hollowing cut, that's mostly just a plunge for depth. I'm not looking necessarily for a clean surface. I'm looking to just open up the interior so I can get close enough to the wall, so I can get deeper, but getting close enough to the wall is more commentary on just making the cut that's pulling this way. But when I actually want to get a near final wall thickness, but with a clean surface, a micro bevel is what I want to use. So we'll go in a little deeper here, and maybe just get down to where we were. Shouldn't be able to make that cut. Don't let anyone tell you you can't use a micro bevel on an interior of end grain. You absolutely can. You absolutely can. But I should not be able to make this cut, however. That's just because it's actually not considered correct. Well, too bad. You see that? You guys will see a very thin wall in there. It's pretty thin. Well, it's thin. I swear, right? Look at where the handle is. It's at the body, and I'm using that as a really strong fulcrum. Yeah. It's about the curve that I want. I'm real close to that. And as long as I'm getting down here, I'm not too far from being done. I'm going to actually create my final wall thickness, again, from my exterior. Should not be able to make that cut. It really shouldn't. Now you can tell people you can cut into end grain. You can cut into it that way. You can actually make a very lovely piece that way. Yep. Nope. There we go. So almost done. Making sure that curve's there. It looks like it is. Yeah, that's the curve I want. Increase the angle. So I want to be probably around 65, somewhere around there. Thing I have to remember, though, is when I'm regrinding a tool like this with a steeper angle, I have to make sure that I shorten the bevel. I don't want it to be too long. Okay. Big difference there. That's helpful. Oh, is that better or worse? I think it's worse. How about that? Better, guys? That's the curve. So, interior's done. That's thin.
your finger on the inside.
Haha. Yeah, that's thin. Yeah. Yep, we're getting a little thinner. I've skewed enough. Another thing I'll look into, which matters, is my depth. I want to know how far deep I am. Pretty thin. We get a shot of maybe just seeing that, how thin that is over there. A little thin. So we're there. Let's see where our depth is. We do need to know that. Excuse me. Here's my stupid face in the way. And okay, and it looks like we're about here, and we'll go ahead and maybe make our parting cut between this line and somewhere else. There we go. There's our parting line. We'll go ahead and apply that eventually. And I think now what we'll do is switch over to a parting tool. Excuse me. And we'll now switch over to skew to finish her off. That's what you say when something good or bad is about to happen, right? Switch to the skew. So we're about there. We'll have our parting line established. Yeah, that's it. I wore that one. Yeah, that's the form I like. I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, that's it in terms of the line that I want, and I think we're about done, guys. Here we go. Pretty thin. Yeah, this would be something that I would want to make sure that I put a little CA glue in. There it is. Uh-huh. Yep. Okay, guys. Check it out. But you'll see that on that interior, you won't see any tear out in there either.
And you said CA glue on the
Yeah.
bottom?
Uh-huh. Little dab in interior and on the base exterior. Yep.
On the interior and exterior?
Yep. Just a little dab. And I would sand that once I dry it out. Yeah. How about it?
All right.
Yeah, good stuff, guys. Thank you. Appreciate your time.